Welcome to 472 Main, a show about issues and happenings in the town of Acton. I'm Steve Ledoux, I'm the town manager, and today our guests are Joe Nolan and Eric Fleming from the Fitchburg Line Improvement Project. Welcome, gentlemen. Both Joe and Eric are part of the team that's responsible for overseeing all the upgrades that are happening on the Fitchburg Line, which includes our new South Acton station. So, once again, welcome, gentlemen, and could you give us a little overview about the station to start? Maybe a little history about how we got to where we are. I know I've been town manager here for like 5 years, and I remember early on we started talking about perhaps a parking deck, and then that kind of morphed into train station improvement. So just give us a little history about how we got there and what we're doing.
Sure, Steve. The Fitchburg Line has some of the oldest infrastructure and least reliable infrastructure in the MBTA's commuter rail system, and so the MBTA has embarked on a program of improvements to that line, including the station at South Acton, which has the highest ridership of all the stations on the line. As part of our program, we're adding a second track between Acton and Ayer, and putting that second track through the station necessitates reconfiguring the station to provide boarding and offloading at the two tracks. So that's really where we started. Once you do substantial work to a station, you have to upgrade it for accessibility for the disabled, which requires a number of improvements over and above what's already out there today.
And I think what's unique about Acton is the fact that obviously we have a lot of public input on projects, and that kind of necessitated the Board of Selectmen to set up what we call SATSAC, the South Acton Train Station Advisory Committee. And I know they've worked a lot with you guys, and you know, part of it was kind of a, I guess I would call it a redesign from the preliminary design of what the station would look like. So I think, you know, we were able to work out a lot of issues to make, I think, the station somewhat unique and fit the character of Acton, which I think goes to everybody's credit. You know, I think the T was very willing to you know, to work with us, and you know, granted we had to kind of ante up a little bit too, like elevator maintenance for the accessibility because of the redesign. But you know, I think everybody should get compliment about how hard we worked together and worked something out. How's the station different than the current station? You know, what's kind of the look and feel of that, and how is it going to look differently than what we're accustomed to?
Well, currently what you have is there's a single platform for the single track. It's what we call a low-level platform. It's about even with the top of the rails, and you have to walk up a set of stairs to get into the car. There's a few shelters, and then, of course, the big parking lot that the town operates. The new station will have two tracks. It will have there two platforms, one for each track. Those platforms will be elevated, what we call a high-level platform, even with the floor of the train cars. So instead of walking up steps to get into the train, you just walk straight in. Or if you happen to be in a wheelchair or on crutches or something like that, you just go roll straight in. The platform will be longer, the length of the longest train we could ever run out here, to make sure we can access every single door, again, for accessibility. And then we're going to build an overhead walkway to get from the new outbound platform, which will be right next to the municipal parking lot, over to the new inbound platform, which will be on the other side, the Maple Street side of the station. And that overhead walkway will include stairs on both sides as well as elevators on both sides to get people up and down and overhead. It will also have canopies over the platform, so much more shelter than there is out there today. And it'll give you a much more sort of modern, upgraded feel to it, much easier to use station than what you have today.
Going back a little bit, Steve, to you, and thank you, of course, for having us. And you mentioned the SATSAC and their contribution, David Martin and Claire Siska. And I'm hesitant to name any individual because there's so many individuals involved. Corey York, your DPW coordinator, yourself. The town's been a great partner in this, and you talked a little about the history and how the station, this is really a very nice station. You mentioned that the town had committed to do maintenance on the elevators because it has elevators. Very rarely do commuter rail stations have elevators, but it was something important to the town. We worked with it. If you remember, you've been here 5 years, so you probably remember, going back to history, how there was an initial design that didn't incorporate all those things. It had switchback ramps, and it was handicap accessible, but it wasn't perhaps in in concert with the architecture directly surrounding the station. So it was SATSAC and others that came together with the community and imparted on the T for us to reconsider, and the T did. And it's been a great marriage of the town and the authority of getting to the right station design. Another element besides the elevators that will be good for the community is the Maple Street lot. The MBTA acquired a piece of property over on the other side which will allow for kiss and ride and access, because we never acknowledged or authorized, people weren't allowed to cross the tracks to the existing station. In practice, I imagine some people did.
Yeah, sure they did.
And now it'll be much safer, and you'll have that access on both sides. So it's going to be a very nice station when it's done.
I mean, it's great. I mean, obviously, people would have taken it to the train every day now or drive down Central Street realize that you know, construction is underway. Who's the contractor? You know, what's the time frame? What's the timetable for getting the project complete and online?
Yep, McCourt Construction is the contractor. They were awarded a contract late last year for about $10 million to build this facility. The work is over about 18 months, so it's underway now. It should be completed by middle of next year.
So maybe a year from now we can see the results roughly.
Right, and I think you'll start seeing the results sooner than that.
Right. Does the project have phases?
Yes, they do. There's basically two phases to the work from the point of view of the public. What they're working on right now is building a new platform on the other side of the track from the current platform, which will become the new inbound platform. Once that platform and the overhead walkway to access it is completed, it will open to service. The current platform will close, and we'll demolish that and begin building the new outbound platform. Once that new inbound platform should be completed sometime at the end of the year, very early next year, and then the new outbound platform will be completed at the end of the project in the middle of next year.
We talked a little about the South Acton Train Station Advisory Committee, and you know, I know, Joe, you're a selectman in Wayland, so you kind of have been on, you know, the town side of issues. In your experience with other similar projects, are we kind of unique in putting a committee together to kind of, you know, try to you know, deal with a project like this? Or?
It is relatively unique. I wish we encountered it more. The committee is well populated with very intelligent and vested citizens that really care about how the station works out for themselves and their neighbors. There are on other projects, occasionally you'll have similar committees. I know I'm working on another project that has, it makes it so much easier for the authority and for us to do a project. They also are a great means of communication. They've got their own website set up. When I send out alerts to them, they can forward it on to neighbors that might not be in our direct database. And they honestly keep us to task. And if we miss something, if there's I know that little things happen with communication, and if a train's idling longer than we may like, or some of our neighbors may like and stuff, they bring it to our attention, and we're able to get it corrected. It's been a real a pleasure to work with SATSAC, and your whole administration's been great.
I mean, it's also unique because we're kind of smack dab in a historic district as well, so that kind of brings its other kind of challenges to it. How can residents get updates on the project and how it's going?
Well, there's a database of stakeholders that we have. We also, through SATSAC, we also try to put information out on the local, is it the Enterprise in town?
Beacon.
Oh, the Beacon. I'm sorry. The Beacon, the Patch, and areas like that. And through the, I know there are quarterly newsletters that come out through the town. We try and contribute information to that. There's a hotline which we've established recently, and that hotline is really for the whole project, because we've got some extended shutdowns, which we may talk about later. Which is Fitchburg Project Hotline at mbta.com, and if I may look at my notes, there's also a hotline telephone number. The email is fitchburgprojecthotline.com, and the telephone number is 617-721-7506, which is a number that they can call. That's a hotline that's staffed. If someone doesn't get an answer right away, they'll certainly get a message by that evening or the next morning. And we encourage people to use that stuff. We're trying to put that out everywhere we can, because it helps. I know you as a town manager or the police or other entities get a call, they might not have the information. So if people know they can call us directly and get the specific information, it works better for everyone.
we talked a little about early on that the station is really part of a larger project, and that being the improvements to the Fitchburg line. Can you tell us about the larger project, what it includes, and what's the timetable for the complete project, the dual tracking, et cetera?
Sure. As I mentioned, there's a lot of antiquated infrastructure on the Fitchburg line. It's 50 miles long, and we have important sections of the signal system and bridges and things that are 80, 100 years old. A lot of it was the track and the switches were laid out for what the service needed to be 70, 60, 80 years ago. Doesn't really serve the purpose we need now, and like anything that's that old, it's starting to wear out. It's hard to get parts. It's unreliable. So the project is designed to address those issues, improve the reliability of the service by putting in a new signal system, repairing or replacing a number of bridges that are outlived their lifespan, making a number of improvements to the track and putting in new switches and things like that to allow the service to run reliably. Things won't break down as often. And at the same time, we also want to improve the service over what we have now. So we're doing a number of improvements to increase the speed of the trains, reduce the trip time. The goal is to reduce the trip from Pittsburgh to Boston by about 10 minutes. And there'll be proportional reductions to various other points in town. This will make a more reliable, faster ride for the riders. It will also allow us to provide a little bit more service to Littleton Station. We have a number of trains that currently only go as far as South Acton. Those will be able to go out as far as Littleton in the future, which should improve the service out there, as well as take a little pressure off the parking lot in South Acton.
So what's the expected time to go from Fitchburg to North Station after this project is complete?
We want to take about 10 minutes off it to get it down to about an hour.
So it's about an hour. Okay.
Right, and all that work will happen over this year and the following 2 years. So by the end of 2015, early 2016, we should have wrapped up and we'll be seeing the benefits of the project.
And I think folks that live in the West Acton area are now seeing some of the double tracking project going on. I know a few complaints about traffic on
Right.
111 and
Yeah,
things
so
like
we're
that.
putting in 9 miles of new track. This is a second track that used to be there decades ago. We're putting it back so we can pass trains in that area. But obviously you have to put the track in through the streets. There's about 8 crossings that we have to go through, and that entails closing the road for a weekend while you take out the pavement and put the new track in.
And I know our Public Works Department is also kind of working in conjunction with you guys to do some traffic improvements so people aren't doing turning and
Yes, they've been very helpful with that.
places. Yeah. So as you mentioned, weekend service has been curtailed or at some points even suspended on the line. Can you tell us a little more about that and how long this suspension of service might be expected?
When you're doing this, when we do minor maintenance, occasional work requires taking train service off for, say, a weekend to replace some element of the project, and we run buses while that happens. When you're doing a project of this magnitude, where you're essentially doing something every single weekend, because you want to keep out of the peak period during the weekday when you have the bulk of the ridership. You want to avoid inconveniencing those people as much as possible. That you couldn't bus them, and that's really the bulk of the ridership. So try to limit our work to weekends, but the amount of work that we need to do and the amount of things we need to do that involve taking the track out. If you're replacing a bridge, for instance, you obviously can't run a train over it while it's being replaced. And there's a number of other things that happen that require just blocking the track. So in order to give the rider a consistent message about what train service is going to be provided, as well as to minimize what happens during the weekdays, and also make sure we get this done on time. So we minimize the length of the pain, so to speak. We've decided to suspend service on weekends on certain blocks of the line. So right now, starting in June, the trains are only running from Boston as far as South Acton. If starting in August, we will only be running as far as Brandeis, and then we'll restore service to the full line for the winter, and then for the next construction season we'll do a similar pattern, and then again in 2015.
Right, and just if I can add to that, Steve, it's not a thing that's undertaken lightly. It was a tough decision that was vetted at all levels of the MBTA and through the consultants and everybody involved in the project, NBCR, our operator on the commuter rail. We have done it on another project, which was the South Coast, the Bay Colony, or the Old Colony lines, where we did, I think, about 80,000 or 90,000 tie replacements, and it required a weekend shutdown. But there are people that that rely on the service that won't have it on the weekends, and we're sensitive to that. As Eric said, it's just the scope of what we're doing. We were looking at some 50 weekend shutdowns. And it's not just, as Eric elaborated, the scheduling those and getting the busing just for those, but by doing that, you're also handicapping the T's ability to do work throughout the rest of the system. And the rest of the system needs maintenance as well. So if you have 50 that all on this one project, you really don't have the buses available to shut the red line down, for instance, or up to Rockport to make the improvements on the rest of the system. So that's why one of the major reasons why we had to do this. So we figured to keep it as short as we possibly could. As Eric said, it adds reliability, but we are sensitive to those that are displaced by it.
But I think people need to realize the bigger picture is to get this online as soon as possible and build up your reliability, because it seems like every morning when I watch the Eye Opener news and then they do the traffic, it seems like at least once a week there's a delay on the Acton-Fitchburg line. So
right, that's showing you kind of the effect of the old equipment.
Exactly.
But to go to further what Joe was saying, I mean, that we have the transportation industry, I think, has been looking at the idea that trying to maintain service is not always possible. It really sometimes is better just to concentrate the disruption to one shorter period and then get it done. This was something that the highway department did on I-93 when they were replacing a whole bunch of bridges. They just closed the road on the weekend, told people you got to get around, but it's only going to be this summer or something like that, and then it's done.
Right. So. Exactly. So once again, I think maybe we can reiterate how people can get more information about the Fitchburg line and the South Acton station improvements itself. How do we?
With the South Acton station, I think the SATSAC site that your town committee has is an excellent forum for information. On that, as well, is listed the Fitchburg email account for direct inquiries, which is fitchburgproject@mbta.com, and the telephone number, which is the hotline, which I mentioned before, which is 617-721-7506. Those are all different venues that people can. Also, another good asset where updates are posted is the MBTA website. On the MBTA website, you want to go to the MBTA website, go under About the MBTA, and there's a listing for projects. You click on the Fitchburg project, and there are PDFs and other files on there that will explain, and project updates to let people know what's going on with the project, what they might expect in the next weeks, months, and years.
Well, once again, it's I think it's an exciting project for the town. I think we're all looking forward to when it's over. But I think that it does show how an entity like the MBTA can work with the local community and make it a win-win project. I'd like to thank both Joe and Eric for being on our show today, and once again thank our viewers for watching 472 Main, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Captain Acton, our superhero, is searching the town for volunteers to fill several openings on town boards and committees. If you have any interest in volunteering, Acton would love your help. A complete list of the current volunteer opportunities, as well as an application form, can be found on the town website.